They call it the nightmare scenario. For decades, in the windowless, high-security briefing rooms of the Pentagon and the deep-level command centers at Langley, military planners have been obsessively running a specific set of war games. The objective is always the same: a full-scale ground invasion of the Iranian plateau. But as the simulations churn through decades of data, the conclusion remains consistently, hauntingly grim. Military analysts suggest that such an undertaking would not just be difficult, it would likely be the most complex, high-casualty, and logistically draining military operation since the beachheads of Normandy in the Second World War. But while the West debates the theoretical "what if," the Iranian military is busy perfecting the practical "how-to." In the footage you are seeing, the smoke and the thunder aren't just a performance for a camera. These are high-intensity, live fire drills designed for a very specific global audience. They serve as a warning that the gates to the interior are locked from the inside, and the cost of entry is a price that no modern treasury or population is truly prepared to pay. This is the architecture of total deterrence, a multi-layered defense designed to turn an entire landscape into a sentient weapon. To truly understand the Iranian strategy, you first have to understand the geography of the fortress. Iran is not just a country in the conventional sense. It is a natural citadel, protected by the jagged, sky-piercing peaks of the Zagros and Alborz mountain ranges, and buffered by vast, salt-cracked deserts that have been known to swallow armored machinery whole. A ground invasion here would never be a high-speed sprint across a flat plain like the sands of Iraq. It would be a vertical, agonizing crawl through thousands of narrow choke points and blind canyons. This is why the first line of Iranian defense isn't a massive standing army waiting in the open to be picked off by satellite-guided munitions. Instead, it is the asymmetric shield. Precision is the mechanical priority here. The focus on man-portable anti-tank guided missiles, or ATGMs. Seen in these maneuvers is a deliberate, strategic choice. In a narrow mountain pass where visibility is low and armor is cramped, a single well-hidden unit with a modern missile can stall an entire armored column for hours. By the time the invader can coordinate air support or a counterstrike, the unit has already vanished back into the network of caves and ridges they call home. This is the philosophy of the thousand cuts. You don't try to defeat a global superpower by winning a single grand cinematic battle in the middle of the desert. You defeat them by making every single mile of territory cost more in blood, time, and hardware than it is strategically worth to hold. This represents a highly decentralized command structure known as mosaic defense, where local units are empowered to act with total independence. It ensures that even if the central high command is severed by a decapitation strike, the resistance remains synchronized, lethal, and local. In the last 5 years, the global perception of how wars are won and lost has undergone a radical shift, and Iran has positioned itself at the very forefront of that revolution. They have effectively bypassed the need for a multi-billion-dollar conventional air force, which would be vulnerable to stealth fighters, by investing heavily in the unmanned aerial vehicle. These drones, ranging from small, low-cost loitering munitions to long-range, sophisticated strike platforms, represent the great equalizer in modern combat. In a true invasion scenario, these would not be deployed in ones or twos, but in massive autonomous swarms. While an invader's sophisticated Aegis and point defense systems are engineered to intercept high-speed jets and multi-million-dollar cruise missiles, they often struggle with the sheer mathematical volume of low-cost, slow-moving drones. The goal here is pure saturation. By flooding the radar screens with hundreds of expendable drones, the defense can overwhelm the electronics of the invading force. This allows them to protect their own heavy assets while dealing precision, surgical strikes to the invader's most vulnerable points: the fuel lines, the mobile hospitals, and the communication hubs. If you cannot fuel your tanks or communicate with your headquarters, you aren't invading a country. You're just parking expensive targets in the middle of a desert. Perhaps the most significant and overlooked development in recent military history is captured in the Zapad 2025 maneuvers. What we are seeing is a level of interoperability between Iranian forces and the Russian and Belarusian militaries that was previously considered a geopolitical impossibility. This isn't just a joint exercise meant for the cameras and the evening news. It represents a fundamental shift in the global balance of power. By training directly alongside the largest and most experienced land military in Europe, Iranian specialized units are gaining first-hand experience in high-intensity, large-scale conventional warfare against modern Western doctrines. They are sharing real-time sensor data, testing electronic warfare tactics to jam GPS signals, and refining logistical doctrines that allow for massive troop movements under the cover of darkness. For a Western military planner, this changes the invasion math entirely and permanently. It proves that Iran is no longer fighting in a vacuum or as an isolated actor. Any move against the plateau now carries the inherent, terrifying risk of triggering a ripple effect across an entire Eastern alliance. The specialized paratroopers and rapid response units you see practicing here are mastering the art of the countermove, the ability to shift thousands of troops and tons of equipment into a conflict zone in a matter of hours, making any surprise attack virtually impossible to maintain. When a conflict moves from the vulnerable coast and pushes into the rugged interior, it enters what strategists call the gray zone. This is where the training for combined arms maneuvers becomes the deciding factor between victory and a decades-long quagmire. There is a clear, practiced coordination between heavy armor, T-90 tanks, and elite infantry units trained specifically for clearing urban structures. In the Iranian playbook, every major city is a fortress, and every small village is a potential trap. The practice of room clearing, basement fighting, and close quarters combat through thick tactical smoke represents a total commitment to the doctrine of urban attrition. They are preparing for a war where there are no clear front lines. If an invading force manages to somehow navigate the mountain ambushes and survive the drone swarms, they are finally met with a military that has been psychologically and physically conditioned for a total war of survival. The command and control systems seen in this footage, with officers utilizing real-time battlefield maps and encrypted radio links, show a modernized force that has successfully integrated technology into its ancient warrior culture. They aren't just fighting with historical passion, they are fighting with live, actionable data. The heavy recoil of the tank guns and the relentless movement through the thick mud and choking dust emphasize the brutal, physical reality of this landscape. This is where high-tech, sanitized invasions go to die, in the slow, grinding, and bloody machinery of the interior defense. As the battle stretches into weeks and months, the logistics of the invader begin to crumble under the weight of the geography. Maintaining a supply line through hundreds of miles of hostile mountain territory is a task that has defeated empires for millennia. Every bridge, every tunnel, and every mountain pass becomes a target for stay-behind cells and long-range missile batteries. This is the concept of strategic depth. Iran's military assets are not concentrated in a few vulnerable bases. They are buried deep within missile cities, carved into the granite of the mountains, hundreds of meters underground. These facilities are immune to conventional bunker busters, ensuring that the defense can continue to launch retaliatory strikes long after the surface infrastructure has been neutralized. This creates a permanent state of threat for any invading navy in the Persian Gulf or any airbase in the region. The footage of naval integration and ship-to-shore movements demonstrates that the Iranian military views the sea not as a border, but as an extended battlefield where they can utilize A2/AD, anti-access and area denial, to keep the world's most powerful navies at arm's length. Ultimately, military power is 50% hardware and logistics, but the other 50% is pure, unadulterated psychology. This is why the formal ceremonies, the pinning of medals, and the rigid, unbreakable discipline of the Grand Parade are so vital to the narrative of national defense. It builds a culture of resilience and collective memory that is impossible to quantify in a computer simulation or a sterile spreadsheet. When you look at the Grand Parade from above, where thousands of soldiers march with such mathematical precision that their bodies form the physical map of their nation, you are looking at a society that has placed itself on a permanent war footing. It is a visual representation of the will to fight, a factor that history has shown is often more decisive than technological superiority. To the casual observer,